Time to bring you up to speed on Nod so you know what you're dealing with. This is Kane.
I'm Seth. Just Seth. From God to Kane to Seth.
Commander, there is to be no quarter given. No leniency in dealing with Kane and his zealots. Wipe his temple off the face of the earth. Destroy the bastard.
I am Kane.
Command & Conquer, one of the first RTS games ever made. It's set in the modern day as the Third World War rages on between the UN-backed Global Defense Initiative and the enigmatic Brotherhood of Nod, as an alien crystal known as Tiberium is consuming and ravaging the planet. In 1995, an asteroid crashed into the Tiber River within Italy. Inside this asteroid was Tiberium. It's discovered, like electricity or nuclear power, Tiberium, once harvested, provides immense yet clean, unlimited energy. It could solve every problem of the 21st century. Yet over the next 2 decades, the true nature of Tiberium becomes apparent as it spreads across the globe like a cancer. Human contact with the crystal kills within seconds. Water, crops, the sky, the land, all being turned into an inhospitable alien wasteland. Between famine, Tiberium illness, mass migration, economic depression, and the collapse of every government on Earth, by the year 2030, 5 billion people have already perished as humanity faces extinction. In 2019, as the worst ecological and humanitarian crisis continues to unfold, World War III breaks out and would rage on for 3 years. This would be known as the First Tiberium War. The Brotherhood of Nod is for those who have high testosterone or high estrogen. In the original games, Nod are generic bad guys, and GDI are leheckin' good guys. But as the series goes on, it becomes a lot more nuanced, and the lines become very blurred. Okay, there's a lot of lore here. To cut it short, GDI were originally established by the UN for peacekeeping and counterterrorism. Yet by 2030, GDI had absorbed NATO, the UN, and all remaining governments into a unified political and military superstate, a one-world government. The Brotherhood of Nod, labelled as terrorists, are revealed to be an ancient, religious, quasi-nation-state, as they believe Tiberium will elevate and uplift humanity. It turns out, the Brotherhood has existed for thousands of years, and their leader, Kane, is immortal. The very same Kane from the Book of Genesis, son of Adam. He is human, he's a megalomaniac, but he's one of us. Since 1995, Nod has gone public and has command posts and links to groups within Japan, the UK, the United States, and France. After a scandal, it's discovered that US defense contractors have supplied Nod with significant military hardware. After 24 years of mounting tensions, bombings, and skirmishes along the fortified borders, GDI struck first in 2019 as they hit a weak point in Nod's Baltic Wall, triggering the First Tiberium War. The GDI campaign takes place in the European theatre, as our capital, the Temple of Nod, lies here in Sarajevo. In Asia, we may actually stand a chance, as it seems the Chinese and Saudi Arabian governments fell to populist Nod uprisings. South America is a bit of a mixed bag, as GDI will pacify the region. And officially, there's no open conflict in the United States. Yet you'd be a fool if you believe that there's no insurrection taking place.
public highway, congressman, pipe bomb, airport. We are past phrase go. All true patriots, now attack! Now is the time for all true American militiamen to take up arms against the police. Pipe bomb, explosive device, go!
For our division, our band of brothers, we have been tasked with fighting GDI over the continent of Africa and advance towards their South African headquarters. Considering the continent's resources and strategic importance, this may be the most important theater of this war. Hard difficulty makes the enemy AI have 50% more health, damage, and speed, yet the original game only shipped with one difficulty, normal, and that is what we'll go with. The first mission is a minor skirmish. We need naval ports to land troops and supplies for the African campaign. So to help, we solidify local support in Libya before marching on Egypt. We must eliminate a local leader, Nikoomba. He's guarded by GDI forces as we start the mission with 16 men and 2 buggies. First thing, keep the men where they are, as a few guys run in trying to attack us. Having done that, grab the army. Now we use this little trick. We distract the GDI riflemen with our buggy as our line of men take out all the enemies. As we repeat this again and again throughout the entire valley, and now and then we use our buggies to deal with any stragglers. Okay, we pull up as we make our way to the town, and we set our men up so that we can pull these 2 guys and then this Humvee, as we make quick work of them both. We have secured the village without anyone being injured, and to minimize civilian casualties, we send 1 buggy to finish the job.
Mission accomplished.
This is important. In many missions, we get to choose which direction to attack from, which does actually change the map itself. The north is obviously more important. The Suez Canal, the coast, and the capital are here, so this is where we strike.
For too many years, GDI forces have maintained a stranglehold on Egypt. It's fallen upon us to liberate these citizens crying out for a better way of life. It's too risky to move our heavy forces in, so we want you to sneak in with a few expendable troops and set up a forward attack post.
You what? Expendable? This, Seth guy, he's a little sketchy. Not much we can do. In this mission, we can't make any buggies, so we'll leave them in reserve and use infantry to defend our base while we build up. Now there'll be quite a few waves. We set up a refinery, which starts harvesting Tiberium, and we micro our troops so we don't lose anyone. Then we build up a huge army of riflemen. After clearing out the area ahead of us, we bring our men and we attack the GDI base in the north. As we send in the first wave, they actually have a few Humvees, yet we're actually able to make quick work of most of their forces. However, we pull back and regroup. Now, in this entire game, there is no way to heal up injured soldiers. So for all our wounded, we bring them into the comfort of our base, and I imagine we'll heal them up later, as the wounded retreat to our base and we pull up fresh men. Finally, we make one last push, taking out the Humvee. Now, throughout this entire campaign, to greatly increase our grip on the continent, we will always capture the GDI base, effectively having 2 Nod bases in every region. We capture the refinery first to starve them of resources, and after they've run out of money, we cut down as many of the scum as possible, as we always let the GDI forces exhaust all of their manpower, and we capture the rest of the base. Mostly. Our job's not done. We go around and harvest all of the Tiberium here for 2 reasons: to secure more funds for the future, and more importantly, to clean this area up of Tiberium. It's no good if we can't control it. We use these new funds to amass an army. We marvel at our base, and then the force will help secure Egypt. And with that, we capture the last building as we finish the mission. It's around this time within Europe, GDI's amphibious invasion from the north has succeeded in creating a beachhead, as the local Nod forces attempt to hold them back, while the rest of Nod's Baltic and Polish armies prepare for its great offensive, as we plan to push west, invading Germany and marching east into neutral Ukraine. This would suitably defend us from GDI forces in both France and Russia. Back to our campaign, we move into Sudan, which is officially a neutral country. However, GDI are covertly operating here, working with the government as they imprison our brothers and other political dissidents. So we invade to liberate them and the country. We push to the east, due to the coast, and here lies the region where the most important river in the world begins to form, the Nile River. We start right out of the gate with GDI bearing down on our convoy. It takes a bit of micro, but we're able to push them back and we scramble to build our base. As we get our refinery up and our Hand of Nod, we start amassing a force of riflemen, for we can't build vehicles just yet. In using these forces, we take out every enemy counterattack, and in time, we wrestle control of the map and the Tiberium fields to the north. We ignore the civilians to the west, and the real threat are grenadiers. We can somewhat bait some groups of them, but the problem is they're anti-infantry, and they can kill dozens of our boys. So we have to use our vehicles to take out these threats. And we begin constructing an army as we scout out the enemy base, and we can see they got a watchtower. We use our bikes to take out this watchtower from a distance, so we instead assault the base head on. However, leading the charge is ironically our harvester. With its immense armor and health, we use this to distract and actually take out many groups of enemies out the front. As it crushes their infantry, we surge in with the boys. And we surround their barracks and bring in our buggies to kill as many GDI scum as we can. We do have to be careful, they get one shot off before they're killed, so we have to keep cycling the injured men out until we capture their refinery and slowly starve them of resources. Once we've wiped out every misbegotten soldier, we then secure the base and we increase our control in the region. With that, again, we clean up the entire area of Tiberium, using these funds to build a massive army outside of our original base, then creating another one outside of our second base, and having done that, we liberate our brothers from the GDI prison. As the conflict is escalating in Europe, our offensive is pushing deep into Germany and Ukraine, as GDI gains significant ground in the Baltic. Meanwhile, in Africa, we poise ourselves to push into Chad. There's a civil war. It again looks neutral. It isn't. GDI, disregarding borders, are operating openly here, while they've invaded neutral countries along the Gulf of Guinea. Due to this, many countries in East Africa withdraw from GDI. For us, in Chad, we go south for two reasons. The first is we cut off all hostile forces in the north. And here, there's a town that's sympathetic to our cause, that's being threatened by GDI.
Assimilate our history, for it is your own. Kane wants you to view this.
This is a Nun base building mission. These are all the forces we'll get. If we don't move fast enough, our supporters will be cut down. First off, we set up a firing line like so, and we aggro every nearby rifleman, dispatching them with ease. Before we can move forward, we need to pick off the few troops and the Humvee in our back. As we push into this next area, we're actually running out of time, so we rush in and destroy this next vehicle, and we have to push past this Abrams tank. As it falls back, we move in and actually intercept the invading force. It's a bit of a mess, but we actually get them before they can touch the town. With the area secured and the people safe behind our lines, we pull the same strategy. Setting up a firing line, we send one guy out to aggro the enemy one at a time. And every now and then there's quite a few groups coming in, with some APCs and more Humvees. Having secured this area, we then move up and we repeat the same process. Not the most micro-intensive thing, the only real threat here are grenadiers. And actually at this point, we aggro the tank. As it bears down upon us, we actually remove the Abrams tank. And with that, we move around the map and clear out the rest of the valley of GDI troops. Pacifying the area, we bring up our men and our people. We don't abandon our own. Then we torch the place. Inside the buildings are GDI riflemen, so fret not. After dealing with that, we're done. In Europe, we have finally taken all of Germany, as the GDI forces are folding. Yet in the east, there's a surprising amount of resistance in Ukraine, as we also push to the western side of the Dnieper River. This will be the greatest extent of our control in Europe, as GDI's northern force under Commander Solomon have just invaded Poland. Yet they suffer from an international scandal, the Bialystok incident, a false flag operation by Nod, as GDI were blamed for wiping out an entire town of civilians. Yet due to these supposed war crimes, the UN had cut GDI's funding.
I have good news. While I was at a top-level briefing with Kane, I made mention of your accomplishments and efforts. He's somewhat impressed, and is interested to see how you handle your next assignment. You have caught Kane's eye, and he is watching. Do not fail me.
GDI, either through coercion, diplomacy, or force, are strengthening their hold on Eastern and Western Africa, as the Brotherhood is planning for a great offensive, sweeping through the neutral and GDI countries of West Africa. However, we will not lead this assault. Instead, we'll provide assistance by setting up anti-air and grounding GDI's extensive air force. As the mission begins, we scout around as we begin to set up our base as quick as possible. The enemy are pretty quick to jump on us, but it's mostly just infantry. And this is the first mission we can actually build up vehicles. And now from here on out, we'll be relying on our holy armor. And to this end, as we get the base up and running, this is when GDI's A-10 Warthogs bear down upon us. If you're not careful, these can kill dozens using napalm? Regardless, we repel a few armored counterattacks on the base. Our light tanks don't stand a chance one-on-one, so we overwhelm them with superior numbers, and we set up a few SAM sites, and these help to clear the skies. And as fighting goes on, we remove even more of GDI's air force. Yeah, there goes about $20 million worth of equipment. At this point, we've amassed a large enough group, light tanks and buggies, our bread and butter. As we begin our attack, it turns into a bit of a mess. Yet we make steady progress and we overwhelm the enemy, using our tanks to take out their vehicles and our buggies to take out their infantry. We slice into the enemy like a scalpel, as we make our next big push over this land bridge. And with that, we deal the killing blow. Having done that, removing all resistance, our engineers come up as we surround their barracks with buggies, silencing every last GDI filth. Being rid of that mess, construction efforts begin as we capture their base and armaments. Since we can actually build sandbags, these can be used to contain Tiberium, meaning we can clean up the rest of the region but leave a controlled Tiberium field here. This is what the Brotherhood wants. With the War Factory, we can build APCs and Humvees. We use this to build up a massive force, as this army will surge ahead and capture the next country ahead of us. All of our wounded are tucked away in our original base. All of these vehicles can be repaired later. We heavily fortify our new base. Having done that, we complete our mission. The immense success of Nod's African campaign has caused panic among GDI's allies. As they attempt to buy time, GDI has installed nuclear detonators in the capital of these three countries in order to maintain control. We will capture one. We will strike at Nigeria, which will cut off the land retreat for all GDI forces to the west. That's the good news. The bad news is this. Due to the report of the UN funding cut, Nod forces in Europe also went on this great offensive on all fronts to absolute disaster. They were waiting for us. We were fooled and ambushed. As the UN secretly increased funding and support, a massive GDI counterattack is taking place along the entire front, as these forces will now be on the defensive for the rest of the war.
I was starting to trust you, but now Kane has asked for your services specifically. GDI has imported a nuclear detonator, and Kane's intelligence shows it hasn't even been unpacked yet. Since you seem so brilliant, sneak into the GDI base with a small task force, find the crate and get out, if you can. And if you're lucky, I'll have a helicopter waiting for you.
Okay, it's pretty clear Seth is scum. He cares only for power. With only these troops up against an entire base, Seth set us up to fail. Not if we can help it. These two troops don't move until fired upon. Unlucky. This, however, triggers a response. This requires proper spacing and coordination. It's kinda cooked, but we're able to wipe out this force with little problem, mostly. As we move up, we line our flamethrowers as such, and we get our bike to aggro all the nearby GDI units just for them to get mulched. Before we can press on, we need to clear our flank, taking out a Humvee and a few soldiers. Up ahead, at the bridge, we use a rifleman to draw their fire so that our boys can head in and take out their tank. Once we head across, we get jumped by a Humvee, but we put that filth down, before setting up another firing line and taking out the rifleman here. Now this is where the pain begins. We can outrange these watchtowers, thankfully, yet they will be rebuilt indefinitely, as the GDI forces have access to a harvester. The good news is that they have to spend their money on rebuilding this, instead of making more units. To this end, we have to go all the way to the right, head above and around the base, as we remove these two grenadiers. It was time. I send a rifleman to body block the watchtower, and destroying the second one, we do the same there. As our tanks roll in to deal with the Humvee, we have to be quick. If we delay, people die. As we use our tanks to remove the huge buildup of troops around their barracks. With the barracks mostly clear, we have this small window of opportunity. Using our second engineer, we charge in and we nab the barracks. We send an engineer to capture their refinery. We don't have long. So we produce an engineer and we rush the war factory. With that, the threat is gone. There are 3 tanks down here, but they ignore us. So we simply harvest what we need and we make more engineers, capturing the entire base. Then we start building up a force of APCs, as we make a formation down here. Using our vehicle, we aggro their tanks and we make very short work of them, as we utilize some Napoleonic tactics so they won't run over our infantry. We also remove this empty town as GDI has occupied it. With that, our work begins. I won't show you the boring bits, but it involves a lot of APCs and a lot of grenadiers. Now, instead of failing or stealing the parts and running off as expected, and we've made a force of hundreds of troops and dozens of vehicles that will crush any GDI breakthrough attempts. Not bad for a smash and grab. With that, we load up our wounded onto the Chinook and capture the nuclear detonator. The only good news from the European front, due to Nod's Navy and Air Force, we have linked up with our cut-off forces in Crimea, and we are holding onto the southern tip of Italy, which has halted GDI's Navy from providing support along the Adriatic Sea. On the African front, GDI have firmly secured the coasts and are struggling to push into the interior. We will strike here at another GDI base in a neutral country.
Well, there's no stopping you, is there? But Kane may not be as impressed with you as I thought. You've been relegated to a simple propaganda mission.
And don't let Seth fool you. This is no nothing burger of a mission. Our efforts here will not only secure Central Africa, but we're mostly here to steal GDI's newest aircraft, the Orca. 2 birds with 1 stone. Unlike the last mission, there is no rush. The enemy do not build up any troops. We have 2 separate groups. We move our armor out of the way of the gunboat on the river, and with our infantry, we set up some flamethrowers to cover the pass, and we bring our rockets and tank to the left, as we go down here using the riflemen to draw the Abrams fire, as we push in with the rest of our anti-tank forces. And in the center, our men easily dispose of the GDI infantry. Using our tank and flamethrowers, we clear the rest of the troops in the central pass, and the grenadier on the right. Having removed that, we link up our men and make them stay put. as our armor will do the work from here. We do not have to tiptoe around the enemy. Being a little more aggressive, taking out Humvees, groups of infantry, we surge ahead and ignore their harvester. Taking out a few guys, we reach their base and we make short work of their tower. I damage their harvester trying to lure them out, but only brings a few of them at a time. And as we deal with the last tank in their base, having cleared out the front, we lure out the enemy group by group as we run them over with the treads of our tank. We repeat this one more time, and that's about it. We move on in and make very short work of the final watchtower, which allows our engineers to flood into the base. We capture the Orca, then the rest of the facility. Now this is when we can begin constructing Abrams tanks. And with a couple of these, we'll head back to the river and deal with that gunboat. Now it's time to win the hearts and minds. There's a town to the left which we can safely ignore. Yet we'll have to launch multiple sorties against this town here. We first deal with the rocket soldier, the only threat. With that, we can take out the infantry, and to minimize damage, we won't kill any civilians. We will only destroy their town. Thanks to the map, there's a few GDI down there who look like civilians, but they're not. I've also built up a legion of heavy armor, enough to crush anything on our march south. With that and a secured new base that's heavily fortified from all directions, we remove the last building in town.
How would you like to ensure your place in the highest echelons of Nod? Surely you are ambitious enough to take on a mission of tremendous magnitude. Your goal is so secret, even Kane knows nothing of it yet. You see, power shifts quickly in the Brotherhood. I've taken the liberty of dispatching your troops to the US. Kane has been loath to attack America, but I feel that it's time, and that you're the one to do it. This is the Pentagon. A full frontal attack with your strongest forces should render their military center of operation.
Yes, power shifts more quickly than some people think. I am Kane. When I get your troops back from the States, I want you to take what men you have left and secure this abandoned GDI base. Once in, build up an arsenal of weapons and use them to wipe out the remaining GDI presence. Oh, and congratulations on your promotion.
Seth has finally been dealt with. A sickness that's been cut out. He would have had our entire division slaughtered. The war, however, is on the tipping point, as both GDI and Nod are at full strength. In response, the Battle of the Mediterranean Sea has intensified, as GDI's navy is invading Egypt and Morocco. At this time, Nod's navy has secured Turkey and Greece, and we are able to resupply our forces in the Black Sea. This sea and land bridge will secure the eastern flank, as fighting throughout the rest of the European front has been bogged down. GDI has been invading Central Africa for a while. We're ordered to swoop in with what men stayed behind and take it before they can secure it. This is all we start with, and we must position our infantry carefully. Luring the soldiers and aggroing the grenadier with a rocket, this goes without a hitch. Repeat it again, and then again. Easy. Once this is clear, use one rifleman to draw the fire while our rockets handle the tank. Brilliant. With that, we have access to the old Nod base. We have to sell the construction yard, and using these funds, we build up a force of flamethrowers. We load them up, and as a first wave, we land near the enemy base. We bring in the second wave, which has some of the engineers. Using this beachhead, we storm ahead, and we deal with the entire defending force. It gets bloody, but we're able to capture the GDI outpost and start building a base. Yet we get attacked immediately. It gets rough as GDI warthogs are making runs on our base. We bring who we can to help in the fighting. I have no choice but to build a watchtower and use our rockets to defend us. We do that again and again, as these towers are the only thing standing between us and annihilation. The misbegotten GDI are relentless, yet we are able to barely make a war factory. It's close, but we get our first tank. From here, it's still rough, but they don't stand a chance as we slowly get more and more armor onto the field. With a second refinery up and running, our operation is in full swing. We still get attacked now and then, but the only real problem is whenever the harvester pulls up. Shooting that, this drives the scum into a frenzy as a massive force slams into the base. Yet with a bit of skill and luck, we obliterate this force. And the boys in R&D finally invent a repair station. We can fix up our vehicles in the field now. The last major thing to note is GDI have fielded 2 Orcas, which we make short work with a group of bikes. And this whole time, we have been brutally destroying quite a few of the A-10 Warthogs, just because we can. With that, we amass our army on GDI's doorstep. And as we push in, there's honestly very little resistance as I bring up our engineers. In the end, we have built up a massive base in the south, with the support base further down here, where we keep all of our wounded. And finally, we captured and fortified another base in the north. Now allegedly, this was originally meant to be another nuclear device, but whatever it's supposed to be, don't forget to grab it. And with that, we're finished. We come back to Egypt. We need to push GDI out for good and secure the Suez Canal. This will also support our brothers in the European theater, which unfortunately, GDI have significantly crossed the Danube River, at least to the west. Yet Nod forces have been extremely fortified and entrenched in the Balkans and Crimea. One thing a lot of people have missed, due to everyone dying from Tiberium, famine and war, all of that good stuff, at the beginning of the war, we can see that Egypt's population was 56 million. Now, all this time later, it's 23 million. This is happening all over the world. Harrowing. Right. We send in a single commando to rally survivors and to retake the country.
Release that beast, sir! I need more bullets!
This part is really fun. We surge ahead and this commando makes short work of all infantry. And we see Nod survivors dropped off into the area. It's time to link up. We head here and grab the rocket boys first, bringing them with us. Pushing here, we clear this area and aggro the M1 Abrams tank. It gets distracted by a commando, and with that, our rockets can make short work of it. Okay, this next part's pretty annoying. When we aggro the Humvee, took me a little while to figure it out, but if we position our men like this, we can actually deal with it no problem. With that, we bring the engineers over and head south to an overrun Nod base. We get our boys in and take it back. We set up an airstrip to bring in tanks, yet GDI begin their assault. Yet they send in A-10 Warthogs just to take out the Giga Chad. It's tight, but using our rockets, we can actually take out these vehicles. The assault is relentless. But positioning our outnumbered tanks in the field, we can fend off their assaults. The good news is that the entire enemy force is only focusing on the commando. Makes it a lot easier to deal with the enemy, bit by bit. They keep trying to come in from all angles, but with enough perseverance, we can actually get out that second refinery and then finally a repair bay. The worst is over. It's really annoying, but in between attacks, they still send more Warthogs. In total, I destroy 14 Warthogs, and we remove their gunboat in the area just to be sure. And after amassing a large enough force, GDI commit to one last attack, mostly because I hit the gritty on their harvester. We bring up all our boys and we march upon their base. You may have noticed we have a new tank, the flame tank, and with that we prune a ton of infantry. Seriously, this thing just massacres tons of them. As we get close, we bring out our bikes, and we use them to lure out the orcas and wipe them out. With the way cleared, we push into the base, and these flame tanks just demolish their defenses, wiping the floor of any resistance. And that's the end of it. We start to capture their entire base, and importantly, these Tiberium blossom trees. This is mutated wildlife and it constantly propagates Tiberium. We've got a contained Tiberium operation here, with the other blossom trees all contained and secured. And with that, our base has been secured and our foothold in Egypt has been fortified with this new base. After securing Egypt, due to the brutal Stalingrad Verdun-like siege in Europe, Kane has overseen construction of a second Temple of Nod. These are our strongholds, the heart of the Brotherhood. These are only built on holy ground. There is one in Sarajevo, and now there's another here in Cairo. With that, we are well into the last year of the war. GDI have practically won the Battle of the Mediterranean. As they prepare to open up a second front, we can see in Africa that GDI are desperately trying to hold onto the Horn of Africa in an attempt to block the Suez Canal. Ahead of us, there are 2 GDI projects that are near completion. The construction of a new type of super heavy tank and a satellite-based weapon system. I choose to disrupt their satellite weapon.
Somewhere in this region is a top-secret GDI research lab headed by Dr. Wong Hu-chan, a sadly misled although brilliant scientist. It is imperative that you locate this lab and terminate the good doctor before research is completed.
We surge ahead of the army, and we will collapse GDI's front line as we cause havoc deep in enemy territory. Dealing with a few vehicles at the beginning, the civilians in this country are very hostile and armed. So, self-defense? We move south at a lightning pace. We cook some random reinforcements as we slowly push through this town. And as we make our way here, we deal with the very first tank. Easy. We move north, setting ourselves up to deal with even more enemy armor, and then dealing with hordes of infantry, until we make our way to the north near another town. We get attacked, but dealing with that, we inch our way forward using our flame tanks to clear the town. After clearing the way and moving our men up, we finally get near the entrance to the lab. We use a rifleman to distract the tank, and we make short work of it, and we repeat that again for the very last tank in the region. To make sure we remove all GDI presence, we move to the west into this town, clearing it out, then a little south, cleansing this area as well. With that, the last of the heretics are trapped on the island. We amass our force and move in, as we crush the few vehicles they have left, and with that we have full reign as we bring up our artillery and smash the enemy base. With that, they all surge out and charge into an absolute slaughter, up against our wall of fire. Knowing we've cleared the base, we move south, removing the last people on the island, and considering we don't have engineers, we use our artillery to smash their defenses, and once we're in, we start to dismantle their base bit by bit. They sell their buildings, which means they make more men, which means we spawn camp them the whole time. With that, we finish the base. I load up our wounded in the Chinook with the commando. Landing at the secret base, using the commando and artillery, we deal with the last structures until we find our man. Then we silence him. As the war marches on, something happens.
The wrong time to take a vacation. We're down about 60% manpower from the T-poison.
Jesus. GDI training has gone from 3 months to 4 weeks. This is never brought up for the Brotherhood, yet we know the dangers more intimately. But if I had to guess, I'd say 30% of all Nod forces have also contracted Tiberium poisoning. And it's around this time in Mexico, Renegade takes place, as Havoc begins his final tour of duty. This is the best game ever made.
It's one of those new subs. Impressive. Are they armed?
This one is.
Back to our campaign. We push into Namibia, as it puts us in striking distance to the capital of South Africa.
I hope I can trust you with this. GDI has stolen the plans and only prototype of our most valuable weapon. I call it Ezekiel's wheel. Essentially, it's a stealth tank. Get it back.
Pretty simple. However, this mission is a nightmare, the hardest in the game. We have 2 groups and have to move quick. With the group here, using a soldier as bait, we draw in and deal with a tank. Move ahead, but be careful of their gunboat. Repeat the process, drawing in the enemy grenadiers. Once they're gone, it seems this boat is hell-bent on killing that one dude. So we take out the boat while we're at it. With that, we move ahead and send out another rifleman, drawing the attention of the mammoth tank. as our sword falls upon that beast. This group has done its job. Now with the boys up here, the Humvee has an obsession with killing our rockets. So we line up our engineers and men as such, and the problem deals with itself. After this, we cross the bridge and deal with the tank. Well, now that we've done this, we can move all the way ahead. Oh, okay. Alright, new plan. Deal with the Humvee, but ignore the tank. Just run and run. We get this group to the river and we line up our rockets on either side. And yeah, okay, it's all RNG and luck with these planes. After quite a few tries, I managed to actually figure out this puzzle. Nothing would be as cathartic as this. With that, we can actually play the game. We use our artillery to knock out the watchtowers, and once we've done that, well, GDI absolutely nowhere in the region. Now we head up and we take the base. However, due to RNG again, the GDI harvester, for some reason, won't come back here. This fucks our whole plan. So I instead capture these buildings and create a refinery. Now I really didn't want to do this, but since we couldn't capture the harvester, we have to destroy this building. Inside there is a ton of money. After the battle, we can just build a new church. But anyway, start building a conga line down here. Sell these buildings, you'll see why. We create the Obelisk of Light, a powerful defensive structure that melts and cuts through tanks and infantry. After we deal with another enemy airstrike, the second obelisk is up and running just in time to greet this utter idiot. And of course, this leads to the GDI scum crashing against us, but to little avail. It took a lot of time, but with these defenses in place, we will survive. They come in waves, and when they stop, we send our harvesters out. We finally set up some SAM sites, which help. Now that things have stabilized, we finally capture the research facility and secure Ezekiel's wheel. With this stealth tank, we can actually harass GDI's harvester, which only really just pisses them off, to the point where they send in another mammoth tank. And with enough of them, I start destroying every single harvester they have, until eventually they run out of funds. No new troops, no new harvesters. And with that, getting a bit cocky, we sneak right into their base, and we destroy their Orca. It is stupid, but it does actually clear out their base. And with them out of the way, we begin to build up our massive force as we use this to clear out the rest of the region and deal with the defending mammoth tank. And with that out of the way, we amass our army on their rotten base as we kick down the door. After a short scuffle, it's finally over. We bring in an engineer and capture their base for ourselves. And like always, we then clear the entire area of Tiberium, leaving a controlled field for the future. We line up our men across the river as we clean up the research base and fortify it. As for our new base, we make it into a true fortress as we finish the mission. The end is in sight. Right, okay, these are rough calculations. From the 7th mission forward, from both directions, GDI traveled 1,200 kilometers to siege Sarajevo. In that exact same time, we conquered just half of Africa. Our forces have traversed 4,800 kilometers. This is a testament to how monumental our campaign has been. It also demonstrates how brutal the European theatre is, as GDI pushed through every trench, every field, every city. And famously, it was at this time that GDI leaders made a vow to never use nuclear weapons no matter how bad the situation gets. It turns out, this pledge was made at the exact same time GDI deployed their new weapon of mass destruction, the Iron Cannon.
It has been truthfully said that knowledge is power. As you are no doubt aware, GDI has begun field testing its satellite-based ion cannon despite your previous success. Unfortunate. But it does provide one with an interesting speculation. Inside this communications satellite are the security codes that provide GDI access to this ultimate weapon. It is imperative that the Brotherhood secure these codes now.
For the first time since the 5th mission, we actually start with an MCV. This is a complete breeze compared to the last mission. We park the MCV here, and we aggro these two mammoth tanks. We lower them to our position with our buggy and we slowly make short work of these vicious beasts. With that out of the way, the hard part is done. We move west and start to set up shop. We quickly set up our refineries and then produce an airstrip to deploy our holy armor. And this whole time, they are only barely attacking us with just a few guys. I spread our men out, and when the warthogs arrive, well, they pathetically throw themselves at us. And pretty quickly, by the time I've set up our first obelisk of light, that is the exact same time they start producing mammoth tanks. The only possibly hard part now is we send our forces out to secure a second Tiberium field to make sure our harvesters are protected. And besides a few minor skirmishes here and there, with this flow of Tiberium, we set up a second obelisk and it's practically over. No matter what they throw at us, it'll be easily swept aside. After building up a healthy army, I push to the north and deal with the forces deployed here. Although by simply positioning our vehicles, they prove no threat. However, exactly at this time, GDI's iron cannon hits us, killing no one. Anyway, I actually decide it's better to contain the Tiberium now rather than at the end of the mission. And with this, we start destroying their harvesters, starving them of resources. And well, you already know how this goes. And with that, we surge in and we capture the entire base, no drama. With the entire region secure and a proper base set up, with full defenses, and with a contained Tiberium field for the future, I have fortified our new base as we capture the command codes to the iron cannon. Okay, looking at the map, the expendability rating. You ever wonder what that was for? It's there for every mission. What it means is this: the higher it is, the less we need to worry about collateral damage. Here, it's at 10%, because we are in the spotlight of history. We are at GDI's Central Command in Africa, just outside of Cape Town. We must be careful, for history's eyes are upon us, as the final battle of the African campaign is about to take place. The whole world is watching.
We have reached the end. The final piece to my puzzle is within your grasp. 2 GDI bases rest on ground I have chosen to be the Cradle of My Temple. Remove them in any way you can.
Completely taken this side of the river. The only way to get across are these 2 Chinhook helicopters. We'll liberate them and load up 2 engineers. That is all we need. The only place we can land is here, and we need to move quick. We capture these 2 buildings and we put 1 sandbag here. And we start constructing an obelisk of light. With that, we build a refinery so we can begin harvesting on this side. The enemy won't attack just yet, but we do need to quickly build a path over here and set up an airstrip. After that, and building up a second obelisk of light, we have fortified and entrenched this position. Not before too long, as they send in a Chinhook with some engineers. They actually try to use our own strategy against us. After this, they begin throwing themselves at us en masse. The attack is relentless, as they throw their entire might at us. And we also have to be careful, their warthogs are targeting our obelisk. I set up a few SAM sites to hold them back. After a dozen mammoths and 3 commandos lay dead, I begin the operation. I send out stealth tanks to harass and destroy their harvesters, one after the other. In destroying these harvesters, it always puts them into this fervor, but you can't fight what you can't see. I'm skipping over a lot, but there's a lot of death and so many waves in this part. But with that, they begin to run out of funds. I amass a large enough army and we're going to take the top base first. Just like every other time, their defenses crack under the heat. They sell their buildings and begin making more troops. Yet as I push deeper, they have a guard tower hidden in the back. So I load up 3 engineers into a Chinook, and I capture these set of buildings. I make an obelisk and I deal with the tower. It's a little unorthodox, but it works. With that out of the way, I capture the base with ease. They actually start to attack this base now, so I quickly set up defenses to buy us time. As every now and then, tanks are streaming out and attacking the old base too. It takes a hot minute, but I get our army repaired and I get more engineers ready to go. Now, we can't capture this building as it gives the enemy access to the iron cannon. It turns out, since we've captured all their power plants, their advanced towers are all down. Their base lays wide open. I charge in with my full might, and without those defenses, it's a complete massacre. I bring in the helicopter, and with that, the battle is over as I set up shop and begin capturing the base. But our true task has only begun. It is here, in the middle, where I will lay the foundation and create the final Temple of Nod. I then build this entire area up with mammoth tanks and overlapping defenses. In the end, we have 2 bases in the south, one here at the corner and another acting as the gateway into the region. In the north, a support base with a hospital lays here. We have an airbase in the corner that's producing our mammoth tanks, and we've got a contained Tiberium field, as in the center lays the temple, the most defended building in the world. In the final base, I set up the last obelisk as we remove the building and finish the last of GDI's troops, ending our campaign.
Your efforts have landed us here, my faithful friend. The temple is complete, and we are about to embark upon our greatest exploit. Begin.
Bruh, okay. We see some 90s Tron shit as we hack onto GDI's Iron Cannon network. The first and only time we'll crack in.
The world. Where to strike? Where will the world most keenly feel the blade of GDI treachery? The choice, my friend, is yours.
Now, which target is the canonical one? We do see and destroy Big Ben in C&C 3. We also see the White House. I mean, it has been destroyed before in real life, but someone would have mentioned if we chose this as the target. Now in C&C 4, which, yeah, it's not canon, but in the terrible comic, we do see the Eiffel Tower. This does give us an indication. The only thing that's never brought up again is the Brandenburg Gate. This is what is canonically targeted. The war is not over, but our part in it is. The mythical Nod commander and his army are now some of the very best within the Brotherhood. We stay behind and ensure South Africa is secured, whilst Kane personally oversees the European theatre. However, over the next few months, it's catastrophic, as Sarajevo is surrounded, and it's at this time that GDI pushes back into Egypt again, and thanks to the original Chad, Havoc, they destroy the second Temple of Nod in Cairo. Yet they won't be able to hold onto Egypt for long. It's unknown if it's weeks, months, or a year, but GDI would be pushed out in a counterattack. And after savage fighting, Sarajevo is finally surrounded, as the commander Solomon breaks the siege and destroys the first Temple of Nod, seemingly killing Kane. The Brotherhood splinters and is cut off. All commanders and Nod forces worldwide are isolated from each other and begin to fortify, preparing to hold out like those did in Sarajevo. Now, we know Kane is not dead, but he is mortally wounded as he's forced underground to heal from his wounds. Yet due to the apparent death of Kane and destruction of 2 temples, securing Europe, and not to mention the incidents with their own iron cannon, the world is exhausted and is at the breaking point. The first Tiberium War has ended. Now, fighting and covert operations still occurred, of course, yet GDI's main focus turned inward, and despite their efforts, Tiberium continued to ravage the globe. Over the next few years, the rest of the G7 nations would finally collapse under the weight of supply shortages, mass migration, and famine, as GDI absorbed all remaining governments. And unable to halt Tiberium, they would instead relocate civilian populations to any untouched blue zones, or the Arctic poles where Tiberium grew slower. Yet they could only evacuate so many. And since GDI were sponsored by wealthier nations, these populations were prioritized. Yet even among them, only those of the middle and upper class who were healthy and had no criminal record were selected for relocation. The sick, the poor, the nobodies. They were simply forgotten. In the end, GDI relocated 20% of what's left of the world's population, as they abandoned the other 80% in the Tiberium-infested yellow zones. Some would scratch out a meager and dying existence, but most of these survivors would flock to the Brotherhood for safety, medicine, clean water, and protection. Yet this is only the beginning, as GDI is researching on ways to halt Tiberium and create new weapons of war to keep the Nod remnants fractured and isolated. Yet, after 9 years after the end of the First Tiberium War, in 2030, Kane would re-emerge and unite the Brotherhood of Nod once more, triggering the Second Tiberium War. We've done our part for Kane and the Brotherhood. Humanity has a long and bloody path before us, as the road to ascension is dark and deep. Yet that is our purpose, to save humanity and to walk beside our Messiah into the great beyond. One vision, one purpose.
This memorial stands as a symbol of eternal life in remembrance of the dead. These brave souls sacrificed their lives to strengthen the Brotherhood so we might live on and carry their names proudly with us. We remember also our ancestors, who came before us and gave us life. Blessed be these names, for they are our kin, our blood. May they stand proudly forever and in time become ancestral themselves. Remember your mourning moment of silence for the lost, but not forgotten.